Let's make sure that they're just debilitated. Why don't we just break their arms and their legs while we're at it so that they can compete against the little girls?
Far-right MAGA commentator Tomi Lahren was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, to talk about Piers Morgan's favorite topic, trans athletes in sports. We're going to take a look at clips of Tomi Lahren as well as two other guests, Dr. Helen Weberly and transgender activist and athlete Sarah Weiss on Piers Morgan show. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Tomi Lahren, I am clutching here the lab report, which was sensationally published in the last 48 hours, which confirmed what I and many others, you included, had concluded with our own eyes at the Paris Olympics, where Imran Khalif was looking like a man, boxing like a man, and beating up women in the ring so badly that an Italian female boxer quit after 43 seconds and said she'd never been hit that hard in her life and feared for her life. So it was bleedingly obvious there was something wrong here, particularly when we knew that Imran Khalif had been banned from the previous year's World Championships after reportedly failing a sex test. And this is the result that got leaked. Now, this is pretty unambiguous. Chromosome analysis reveals male karyotype. That's it. It looks like Imran Khalif is a biological male. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Piers, the science doesn't lie. It's great to have that clarification, though none of us really needed it. I think it was abundantly obvious to those of us with eyes that watched any of this. We knew exactly what was happening here. But you'll recall, Piers, sports journalists, especially here in the United States, they called for people like you and me and Outkick and other outlets that were honest about this to be sued up, down, right, left, center. Oh my gosh, how dare you misgender this person? You guys are so evil. It's so awful. Well, where's the apology? Because as we suspected, the biology test came out, and guess what? 100%, we got our answer. That's a dude. And we need to be very clear about all of this. There is no place for men in women's sports. If you are a man who thinks he is a woman, that's fine. You can dress up, you can wear makeup, live your life, I don't care. Until you infringe on women and girls, then we're going to put our foot down. Finally, here in the U.S., we have a president that's doing something about it. And I hope California, I know we're going to get to this with A.B. Hernandez, I hope California loses all of its federal funding. Enough is enough.
Now, I completely agree. Dr. Weberly, I know you do not completely agree. So let me start by just asking you this question. Why, out of interest, why do we separate the sexes in the Olympics?
It's a historical thing, isn't it? You know, that we have male and female categories.
But why do we do it?
We're learning over the last 20 years is that male and female categorization doesn't work.
What do you mean it doesn't work?
Because not everybody fits into a very simple male-female category, and that's why we're having discussions like this. It's not. But
this is the problem with the whole debate. They actually do, because the vast majority of human beings fit into the category of male or female.
I have to say something.
Well, no, hang on. I'm going to come to you, Sara, and I will. I promise you.
The vast majority, you say, and that's the vast majority, and that's.
It's only in the last 2 or 3 years that suddenly half the world went, I'm transgender. Before that, everyone lived quite happily as male or female, with a few people identifying it who were leading perfectly good lives, and there was no problem. Suddenly, everybody wanted to be on the transgender train, and then everything had to be changed. Women's rights had to be destroyed. Women's rights to fairness, equality, safety had to be completely ignored and eradicated at the altar of transgender activism. And I have nothing against transgender people. I've said from day one, if you're transgender, that's absolutely fine by me. I hope you have the exact same human rights as me in every regard, to human rights, to safety, equality, all of it. But that's not what's happening. And in women's sport, unfortunately, this absurd obsession with allowing transgender athletes to compete in women's sport has seriously damaged the integrity of women's sport, the fairness, the equality, and as we saw at the Olympics, the safety. We now know that Imran Khalif was a bloke.
Well, Imran Khalif is not transgender, so I don't really know why.
Well, you don't know that actually, do you? You don't actually know you don't know what Imran Khalif is. All we know from this leaked lab report is that Imran Khalif tested positive for male chromosomes. So last time I checked, that makes you male.
Well, I don't know how that came into your possession.
Have you seen your lab reports, Piers?
Well, it's here. It was leaked, yeah. It was leaked.
Have you seen yours? Do you know what your chromosomes are?
I know that I'm a man, yes. I am a male. And by the way, if I took you on at pickleball with enough training, I would win. You know why? That's why we separate the sexes. And I'm sure you're great at pickleball, but I also know that, for example, when the American women's football team, soccer, as you so shamefully call it, but when the women's soccer team with Megan Rapinoe, that towering force of equality, when she was leading that team, they were the best women's soccer team in history. And they played, I think it was the Dallas under-15 men's team, and they lost about 7-1. Right? Which just kind of suggested to me that my theory that the reason we separate the sexes is because males have a biological advantage is actually why the transgender debate in women's sport is also obviously wrong.
Here's two areas where, on this topic, I would say that Piers Morgan is completely disingenuous. One, he says everybody is jumping on the trans train. That's not true. The Olympics, the past Olympics in Paris, there were 3 transgender athletes. 3 out of the entire group of people who competed in the Olympics. In college sports in the United States, the president of the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, testified before Congress. They asked him how many athletes there were competing in the United States, college athletes. I believe the number was 300,000. I'm just going off the top of my head, but I believe it was 300,000 athletes. They said, how many are trans? He said less than 10. Less than 10. Not 10,000, less than 10. So that's the first area where he's disingenuous. This is not, there aren't people jumping on the transgender train. And the other is the idea of fairness. He brings up the boxing match where the woman who lost, he says it was 43 seconds, and she said she'd never been hit that hard before. I can remember Mike Tyson in the early 90s boxing and winning fights in times like that, like 43 seconds. And I'm sure that there were fighters saying, wow, I'd never been hit that hard before. And they gave up after 43 seconds, right? Pretty sure there were some that were about 30 seconds with Mike Tyson. I wonder, Piers Morgan would have been a really young guy then, but would he have been saying, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. Mike Tyson is too strong and too fast, and these other guys are giving up after 30 seconds. We need to do something. We need a different category. No, you've never heard conservatives ever saying that. I've never heard conservatives talk about fairness ever until now. Fairness in sports. You have Shaquille O'Neal's son. I don't know if Shaquille O'Neal's son has a son. But if Shaquille O'Neal's son were 7 feet tall and 400 pounds or whatever like him, and competing against other basketball players, and he's a foot taller than all of them, and he scores 100 points, all of the right wingers would just say, hey, that's just how it is. Life's not fair. Sorry, you're not Shaquille O'Neal. He's just better than you. And if you suggested, hey, maybe Shaquille O'Neal should be playing in a different group with other boys who are 7 feet tall and 400 pounds. Oh, what do you want, a participation trophy? Are you a snowflake? That's what Piers Morgan and Tomi Lahren and all the rest of these right-wingers would be saying. So they're full of crap.
Bringing in you here, Sara, because you are a semi-pro pickleball player. Pickleball, I know, is a very fast-growing sport, and I have great respect for all pickleball players. But the bottom line with all sports of this nature is that if somebody like LeBron James decided to take up pickleball and really worked hard at it for a year, he would hammer you into oblivion, and there'd be nothing you could do about it.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought all this stuff up. And the first thing that I do want to mention, it was mentioned that it was obvious that Amin Khalif was a male.
Yes.
And I think that is part of the most harmful part of this, is that we are categorizing what is femininity. And then we're putting it out there like propaganda.
No, male biology. We're categorizing what is male biology.
If somebody doesn't look feminine enough.
No. It's not about femininity. It's about identifying male biology when we see it with our own eyes.
Identify things with lab reports all you want. But if we are putting out this propaganda that you have to look a specific way, and if it's obvious that you look masculine, then you're going to go under a microscope of people who do not like the fact.
Hang on, Sara. No, it's when you look that way and it's already known that you, the year before, failed a sex test, which meant you were banned from the World Championships.
Might say that about
It's the two things going together. It's like, oh, hang on. This person was banned for testing positive, apparently, for male chromosomes. Cue the lab report, which now confirms that, and is now competing in women's sport in the Olympics in a boxing ring where her women opponents are quitting after 40 seconds because they've never been hit that hard. I'm putting all these three things together, and I'm saying, this is wrong. Why aren't you?
Now, the problem, though, is that if you're putting that out, and sure, there might be certain things that say, hey, well, what about the accusations that she's a male and stuff? The fact that there
is a man.
Many lesbian women or women who do not look feminine enough. Yes, I'm not denying
it's nothing to do with the way she looks. I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't care how she looks. She could be 8 foot tall for all I care with a long scraggly beard. It has nothing to do with it. It's the fact that she's a biological male. That is the problem, which gives her a natural... And let me bring in Dr. Webley. You know as a doctor that men have a biological advantage. Muscle mass, lung capacity, blah, 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 blah. It's why we separate the sexes. Otherwise, in the Olympics, women wouldn't win any gold medals, or silver, or bronze.
Not true.
Actually, women would win...
I've got a good idea for
I think I read a survey that said women might win 2 medals in the entire Olympics if they made it gender neutral, which would be a disgrace. Now, Dr. Webley, why are you as a doctor trying to ignore biology?
I haven't been able to speak yet, so I don't know why I'm being...
Feel free, fire away.
Thank you. I've got a really good idea, right? There's a load of debate about puberty blockers and gender-affirming care amongst transgender people worldwide. If we let transgender young people, transgender feminine young people, have access to the puberty blockers and gender-affirming hormones that they are asking to have, then they wouldn't build that muscle mass, they wouldn't have increased skeletal size, and they wouldn't have
What age are you going to do this?
Well, you usually get puberty blockers when puberty starts. That's
what age are you going to do this to kids?
Well, I just answered, when puberty starts.
Give me an age.
Well, puberty starts between the age of around about 8 to 11.
You're going to give 8-year-olds drugs to try and resolve this problem. Have you learned nothing from the whole Tavistock clinic? Well, I don't think it's funny. I'm a father of 4 kids, including a 13-year-old girl. I don't think any of this is funny. The fact that your solution is to drug, is to block puberty for 8-year-old kids. Really?
I'm a mother of 5 children, and I believe that every single child deserves the right to live their best life.
Absolutely fine. And as Tomi said, nobody has a problem.
That is a transgender
you can live as a dog or a cat, as far as I'm concerned. It's fine.
I don't think I'd let my children do that. Sorry.
Well, actually, there are kids at school called furries who go as a cat. And
we've had this argument.
The furry thing, Piers Morgan, has been debunked over and over and over again. That's not happening. So if Piers Morgan ever had any credibility at all, he completely lost it with that comment there.
Time and time again.
And my solution, by the way, my solution is I would absolutely respect their right to be a little furry cat, and I would give them a little litter tray outside the thing where they could go and urinate, and I give them cat food. And trust me, after 2 days, they're back being girls again. Tomi,
Piers, I have a question.
Tomi, the answer, Tomi, hang on, Sarah. Hang on, don't all talk at once. Tomi, the answer apparently is to give puberty blockers to 8-year-olds.
So my
Piers,
question,
that's called child abuse. And the fact that you have somebody on this panel that is advocating for the ability to debilitate young boys so that they have gender delusion, so that their body is now being mutilated, their actual biology is being changed irreversibly so that they compete against little girls. That's really the solution here. Let's debilitate boys so they don't have an advantage. Let's make sure that they don't have better muscle capacity and lung capacity. Let's make sure that they're just debilitated. Why don't we just break their arms and their legs while we're at it so that they can compete against the little girls? Do you realize how sick that sounds? That's abuse.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is.
To me, the whole point with all of this is Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan and these other right-wingers are all up in arms over this issue that is just not happening that often. It is, I cited statistics earlier. There's just not that many trans athletes. Boys are not saying, oh, I'm going to pretend to be a girl so I can go and dominate in high school sports. That's not happening on any, the right wingers have this idea that real life is going to be like an 80s sex comedy where a boy is going to dress up as a girl so he can get into the girls' locker room or whatever. That's not happening on any, widespread level. And I want to go back to something that Piers Morgan said. He keeps talking about if these different professional athletes competed in, like he talks about LeBron James, if LeBron James decided that he wanted to play pickleball, he would just dominate. Maybe, but maybe not. Just being big and strong doesn't mean that you are going to be able to compete at the same level as somebody who has been competing in a sport for a long, long time. For example, I don't know if they have it in the Olympics, but billiards. LeBron James would not be able to dominate the world's best women billiards players or best women's bowlers. We saw this with Michael Jordan back in the 90s. He decided that he wanted to play baseball, and Michael Jordan is one of the best athletes of all time, but his skills as a basketball player didn't translate to baseball. Now, people are going to say, well, Michael Jordan was competing against other men, and yes, he was, but he was just a mediocre baseball player. So just being big and strong and fast doesn't mean that you are automatically going to be able to dominate a sport because of your gender. Mike Tyson was one of the greatest fighters of all time. And like I've talked about before, he was knocking people out in 43 seconds or whatever, like Piers Morgan is talking about with the Olympics. But if Mike Tyson had decided that he wanted to be a basketball player or a football player or a baseball player, would that have translated? I'm going to say probably no. And even if he had competed against women in basketball or football or baseball, I don't know that he would have necessarily been successful. So again, Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan are completely disingenuous on this issue. And another thing that I'd like to bring up is all of these right-wingers that are so concerned about the sanctity of women's sports all of a sudden have made fun of women's sports for decades. Right-wingers constantly have made fun of the WNBA, the Women's NBA League. Oh, nobody watches women's basketball. They don't make any money. Nobody cares about that. Oh, look at these girls playing basketball. They'll never be as good as the men, blah, blah, blah. But suddenly all of those right-wingers like Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan, they all care about women's sports all of a sudden. They're full of crap. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. Do you agree with Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan, or do you have the opposite viewpoint? Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.